This man is considered to be the best basketball player of all time, and I agree. But I have a question for you. How much of his success is due to his physical gifts? This man is considered to be the best baseball player of all time, but how much of his success is due to his physical gifts? Do you want to step up your game? Will you ever be able to do this? Copy this? No? Then let's focus on the mental game. But who can teach us the mental game? Him? Maybe. But I think we can do better. Let's take athleticism out of the equation. This is the art of competition. What's up, guys? Today we have Lanny Bassham on the podcast. Lanny is a 3-time gold medal winner in Olympic rifle shooting. He is the creator of the mental management systems, and he's been doing it for 43 years now. This man is the godfather of the mental game. So sit back and enjoy. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
You're over there in Texas, right?
Yeah, and you are?
I'm in Daqing, China. Like real far north near the border. It's icy cold here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm teaching English over here.
I see. How long you been doing that?
About 6 years now.
Uh-huh.
So I got a list of stuff here. Man, I've been following your work for a while now. I read your book about 6 years ago, and a lot of the stuff you talked about just really stuck with me, and I use it today when I play poker or whatever I'm doing. I say use some of that stuff still, and I was like, I started doing this podcast more and more, and I was like, man, I got to get that guy on here. So I'm glad you're here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Cool. Well, first things first. So like when we're studying and practicing, we're basically learning from data of those that played before us. That's how we learn, right? We take data, we compile it, and we learn from those that came before us. I think it's really important to learn from skilled players, not athletic players. Because we don't know, like, if we're watching basketball, we don't know how much of their success comes from their athletic gifts, right? Like Michael Jordan, everybody wants to study him, but the guy's 6'7" can jump from the free throw line. How much of his success comes from that? So that's kind of what my channel has a big emphasis on. Well, you were smart because from a young age, as you said in your book, from a young age, you chose a sport that you're like, I can't, I'm not tall, I'm not fast, but you chose a sport. You were smart. You chose a sport where it wasn't affected by those athletic disadvantages that you were at. What would you say to somebody who's at a disadvantage athletically like that? Like someone young who wants to start competing, what would you say to them if they're short and they want to play basketball, for example?
I think it's a hard question to ask someone young, like 12 years old, to ask the question that really needs to be asked is, why do you want to compete? I mean, what are you really wanting? What's the result? What does the goal look like when you cross it? I think people are motivated by different things. For me, I was motivated by wanting to be accepted and wanted to be good enough at something that people would actually say you were good at it. I mean, not so much that I wanted to be famous or anything like that, but I wanted to get further and further away from, we don't want you on our team. So I was looking for something that I could that I could do that would give me that sense of satisfaction that I'm actually good at this. And that's I think that when people deliberately are forced into by the culture of almost this is your choice. You can be you're going to play baseball. I mean, that's what all young Americans do. They play baseball. And then you play basketball, or you play hockey, or you play. It depends on what part of the country you're in, but all those sports require you to be, quote, athletic. You need to have if you're fast, if you're quick, if you're coordinated, you have a little bit of an advantage over the guy who's not physically endowed. And so, fortunately, there are other options.
Yeah.
And some of them will take you to the Olympics when baseball won't.
Yeah. So maybe you tell them to examine their goals.
I suggest that it's at some point a person must understand why they're doing something. And now my why changed as I got better, and from wanting to be recognized that I could actually do something well to I wanted to make a U.S. team. I wanted to wear a USA on my back. I'd met guys that had done that, and I thought, boy, that's a cool thing. I mean, that kind of separates you from the guys. I mean, I guess another way to look at it is that if you're on a team, you want to be the best on your team. If you're the best on your team, you kind of like to be the best in the district. If you're best in the district, you kind of like to be best in the state. When you're best in the state, you kind of like to be national champion.
Goals are always changing. And
national champion, you like to be world champion. When you're world champion, you'd like to be Olympic champion. And in my sport, there's no higher goal as far as there's no universe games. So that's it. Like for a golfer, it's Wimbledon. I mean, for a tennis player, it's Wimbledon. For a golfer, it's it's playing in the Masters. And so it just depends on what a person's goal is. And I think a lot of people, their goal is, well, I want to have fun. Well, that's a good goal. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that goal. And but you're not. When you are involved with other people, you've got to decide: do you want to play a team sport, which is great, playing a team sport. Now, when the team wins, everybody wins, and when the team loses, everybody kind of loses. So that's the way it is. Or do you want to do a sport that's an individual sport? Well, it's all up to you. Well, you got nobody to blame when it's all up to you when you lose.
I think it's probably important to be honest with the child and say, like, do you agree that when people say, like, you can do anything you want when you put your mind to it, but you got to be honest with them and say, like, okay, you can do it, but you're going to be at a big disadvantage.
That's not true.
Okay, you don't think it's true then?
No, of course it's not true. You can't do anything you want.
Right.
You can. Okay, you can be anything you want. Come to America. You can be an unlimited opportunity. Oh, come on. Now you can increase your opportunity, but I'll tell you what. I'm almost 76 years old. To tell me I can do anything I want.
Well, I mean, within reason, yeah.
I can't play basketball in the NBA.
Right.
I can't do that. Okay, a 9-year-old can't go to the Olympics. If they have if there's an age requirement, or if there's and a lot of times opportunity. I'll tell you what it takes. It takes a lot of factors to be able to accomplish anything that's really important to a person. Now, let's talk about winning for just a minute, because I think having the right definition of winning is really important to people. I don't like the idea of winning and losing. And my definition of winning is when you reach the top of your potential. But the potential is different for people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about somebody who happens to be, I don't know, in a country where that sport is popular versus or that their opportunities are available in their culture or in their climate. I mean, I happen to be fortunate that my father was assigned to the United States Army Marksmanship Unit as a coach, and I had access to the best in the world. I just happened to be living in America at a time when the United States dominated Olympic rifle shooting, and my father worked where all those guys work, and so I got to meet them and talk to them, and being I just kind of stood on their shoulders. I mean, I didn't have to come up with a path. They had the path. The opportunity for somebody who didn't have any money to compete in the second most expensive sport in the Olympics to train for. Shooting is the second most expensive sport in the Olympics to train for. And when you don't have any money, my father's a captain in the Army, I mean, a major in the Army. We don't have any money. I can't afford this. But if I go in the Army and I'm assigned to the United States Army Marksmanship Unit, opportunity is handed to you if you make the team. And so your bullets are paid for, your travel is paid for, you get a salary, and you got a legitimate opportunity there. But if somebody can't get to the United States Army Marksmanship Unit, then they're going to have to find a way to pay for the training and to pay for the travel and pay for the bullets and all that kind of stuff. So opportunity plays a big role in what a person can do. So just wanting to do it and believe, I think that there's a better way to say that, and that it's just to say it this way, that if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't want it, you have no opportunity. So it's not that you can do anything that you want. It's that you have to define what the opportunities, what's necessary. And then if you're willing to do it, and it is possible for you to do it, then you can do that. But everybody can win if the definition of winning is to reach the top of your potential. It's just the potential is different for people.
Yeah. I think that you kind of answered my next question already, which is, how did you improve in the 70s when there wasn't the resources there are now? Like, how do you know what you were studying was proper technique?
Well, the guys that were winning were using it.
You had access to the best.
Yeah, I mean,
the best.
So I'm watching these guys now. There is no benefit to them to try to teach me what they were doing, but they couldn't hide what they were doing, what I could see. And so they were nice enough. I mean, they obviously they don't want me to get too good, or they gotta beat me to win a tournament. But they are also shooters, by and large. Shooters, in my opinion, athletes in general, are very helpful to people that are not as skilled as they are, and so I had an excellent coach and Bill Pullum. I had an excellent coach in my father, and so I was I was able to have what I needed, almost everything that I needed. But what wasn't provided at the Army Marksmanship Unit was how to think. And it was, some of it was, I mean, Colonel Pullum did some things for me and to me, and showed me some things, showed me how to do certain things that were very, very helpful and important. But we didn't, at that time in history, we thought that mental toughness, or the mental game that it's called now, was something you had. Like you were just the kind of person that could handle pressure. And not everybody's going to be courageous in a battle. Some people are not going to be able to handle the pressure. So it was something you had. It wasn't something you could learn. And because it wasn't something you could learn, we weren't trying to learn it. And so we never had a class on it,
was there like a time when two different coaches were teaching you two different techniques?
No,
not really. You had consistency there.
No, because there weren't a lot of technical coaches either. But I think that what happened, not everybody was shooting exactly the same way. There's a difference between principles and preference. Okay, a principle is something that works for everybody all the time. You can't violate the principles. You need to follow through when you need to work hard. I mean, those are principles. So, but how you do it, the kind of position that you take when you're shooting, there's quite a bit of difference between the way people train, especially at elite levels, how they train, and what their standing position looks like. There are principles like you need bone-to-bone support instead of trying to hold the rifle up by muscles, because bones, if you have a bone-supported position, it's much more stable than a muscle-supported position. So you need to have a natural point of aim, which means that when you relax in the position, the rifle doesn't move. Whereas if you have a poor natural point of aim, when you shoot, the rifle tends to recoil instead of recoiling straight back or up and back, it tends to go to the left or right. Well, that will open up that will make your result not to be so good. So there are principles out there, but then there are preferences. There are people that use this piece of equipment, or like the sights higher or lower, or whatever. This is the way that they've chosen to shoot, and nobody wants to make a mistake. So they're all trying to do it use techniques that are as productive as possible. But there are certain things that are principles, and the same thing is true with the mental game. There are certain principles that work for everybody all the time, and the only way that you would know that is if you were coaching a lot of people. And we have discovered a lot of things that we thought would work, but we found out that they don't. And how do we know that? Well, because we did our research. We took people and we tested it with them, and we found out that most things that work, a lot of people use them. And when you've
been doing this for how long now? Like 30 years now, something like that? The mental game focus?
That's 1977.
Oh, wow. Longer than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the company has been around since 1977. I won an Olympic gold medal in 1976, but world championships in 74. So I've been using mental management since 1974. I started my research with talking to Olympic athletes to find out what they were doing about the mental game in 1972.
So you've gathered a lot of data, and you've probably been doing this longer than almost anybody.
I don't know anybody that's been doing as long as I am.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there couldn't be somebody older than me, but I mean, most people aren't still working at 76.
There's not many people focusing on the mental game. Like I've kind of scoured the internet, and there are, but I haven't met anybody who's been doing it longer than you, and I certainly haven't seen an emphasis on it.
I'll tell you what you don't have, which is kind of surprising to me, is that they don't do it the way I do it. There's a thing called sports psychology, and sports psychology started back in the 60s, late 60s, and psychologists, they study the mind and behavior and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, somebody decided that, we studied the mind, and there was a demand for wanting to know about how the mind relates to athletic performance and things like that. But it's really interesting that, to me, that if you ask any elite performer today in anything, PGA Tour player, Olympic athlete, anybody at the top of the game, what percentage of your sport's mental? You're going to get a big number back. The number I get most often is my sport's 90% mental. Well, that's a tremendously high number there. So it's obviously super important. And then you ask the second question. Well, since you've been doing it, what percentage of your time and money have you spent on sharpening and increasing your mental skills? You're going to get a very low number.
Yeah.
Well, now, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense. The thing that you think is 90% of the game, you almost ignored. Why is that true? I mean, that's not true of almost anything else. But it's true about the mental game. Well, I'll give you a couple of reasons why that's true. First of all, it's more fun to work on form. It's more enjoyable to work on form. I mean, it takes a little bit of you got to be pretty frustrated to work on you. I mean, nobody wants to work on you. We all want somebody else to change. We don't want to change. We want to be who we want to be. I want to eat whatever I want, and I still want to be fit and trim. Well, that doesn't work. So what it's just more fun to take a lesson on form, and it takes a little bit of courage to come in my door, because we're going to ask you to change from the inside out, and most people resist that. The second reason is that there's almost nobody doing it the way that we do it, and I think the way that we do it is the only logical way to do it. And let me try to explain that. So today, the top people think that their sport's 90% mental, but it's not. It hasn't always been like that. As a matter of fact, I've done some pretty heavy research on this topic and the history of the mental game, and I can't find anybody interested in the mental game prior to 1893. Prior to 1893. So this is and what happened in 1893 is that Norman Triplett, who happened to be a psychologist, wrote a paper. He was working with cyclists, and he found out that when cyclists train together, they get better. And he developed some theories about it and wrote a paper. And that's the earliest one in print that I can find of having any interest in the mental game. I mean, there was sport prior to that. But nobody was talking about how you think it's important. And then in 1913, you got to go quite a bit of ways before you get into somebody that was actually called himself a mental coach.
To add on to what you said about 90% of it's mental, but they only train mentality like 10% or 5%. Like they're doing the opposite of how much mental game they should be training. But also, if you look at the amount of coaches, shouldn't there be 90% of the coaching out there should be mental game coaches?
Yeah, but it's not, and I'll tell you why it's not. It's a whole lot easier to teach form than it is to teach a mental game. You can demonstrate form. Mm-hmm. Like, let's say I'm a golf coach, I'm a swing coach. I can say, hey, look, you see that champion? You see how he's holding the club?
Mm-hmm. Easy.
Club like that. Try this. See that champion? See what he's thinking? Think like that.
I think the other reason why is the people that need this the most are youths. And they're the ones that don't care about it the most.
Well, you're absolutely right. And everybody that comes to our training, they all say the same thing. I mean, you can just wait for it. They're going to say it. You don't have to prompt them. They're going to say this. I wish I'd known this sooner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've known it sooner, too.
Yeah. How do we convince them that they need this? How do we talk to a 16-year-old kid and say, like, you need this?
I'll tell you what, you when you look at the results that we get after explaining some simple things to people that they're not going to hear from technical coaches, and they're not going to hear from sports psychologists either, because there's a big difference between sports psychology and mental management. Sports psychology is based on psychology. So if you want to be a sports psychologist, here's what you have to do. You have to go to a university and you have to study under people who study the mind and things like that. But I'll tell you what, you're going to have a hard time finding even one course in a PhD sports psychology program that's taught by anyone that is hired by a top athlete. I don't know of any sports psychologist teaching in a university that is working with a top.
So you're saying like these PhD guys, they don't know how to apply their knowledge.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody that not only didn't develop their own stuff, but actually won something with it. You're going to have a hard time finding somebody that does that. So now, don't get me wrong. I'm not putting sports psychology down. Here's what I'm trying to explain. That if you look at the curriculum of a degree in sports psychology, first of all, sports psychology is not totally psychology. There's a lot of courses on kinesiology and other things that are not psychology. But I'll tell you what they don't teach. They don't teach you how to win. They don't teach you what to think about before, during, and after a golf shot or anything like that. They don't teach that. And in order to get a PhD from sports psychology, so it takes years and years studying stuff that you're not going to use if you're working with it.
So you're saying they're not teaching the stuff that you're really going to apply that much?
Not applicable. And
I agree.
So you got your PhD, and you go out and you think that people are going to rush at your door because you've got a PhD. Now, if you become a doctor or you become a surgeon, they're going to rush to your door because you have to have a residency program in surgery, and people need surgery. Well, everybody needs mental training. Everybody needs needs to know what to think about. They need to know. It's very, very important. There's no question explaining that it's important. The problem is that what they miss is that my clients don't care what grades I made in psychology, which I think I probably had to take one course in my 2 degrees that I have, and nobody cares about my degrees anyway.
Yeah.
One of them's in business and the other is in information technology, and that has almost nothing to do with what people pay me for. But I'll tell you what my real PhD in is in winning and helping people win.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to know. And where do you get that? And now there are some, don't get me wrong, there are some sports psychologists out there that help people. But the ones that I know that help people are not helping them with the things that they learned to get their PhD in college. The things that they're using to help people is what they've learned from their students. Through trial and error, they notice some patterns going on. Like when we think this way, we tend to get better results. Okay, so I'm going to start teaching that. Well, that's the difference between mental management and sports psychology. Sports psychology is based on psychology. Mental management is based on what the winners are thinking. So I got started in this, and anybody can do this. Anybody can try to do this. But here's the way I got my basic information. I got good enough to make an Olympic team. I went to the Olympics and choked in the Olympics and ended up getting a silver medal when I should have gotten a gold medal. My teammate got the gold medal. He didn't choke. I did. But we were shooting comparable scores in training. And I came home knowing that the reason I wasn't winning was because I didn't have a mental game. And I refused to accept the fact that you couldn't learn this.
How old were you at this time?
Huh?
How old were you at this time?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see, 1972. What am I? Maybe I'm like 5 years out of college, something like
mid-20s, whatever. Okay.
5.
And you were smart enough to realize, hey, I need mental game.
Well, yeah. I mean, you go in the Olympics and you're shooting scores that can win a gold medal in practice, and you go in the Olympics and your scores, you drop enough points. You didn't forget how to shoot, but you're not thinking the same way, and so I wanted to know. The first thing I wanted to know was what's important that I don't know. And so my way of the first thing I did is I went to see a sports psychologist. I didn't get any. I really didn't feel like he was wanting to help me get over the fact that I didn't win a gold medal, and I really didn't think that was the reason I went to him. I went to him because I wanted to win. And I realized very, very quickly that he's not capable. He doesn't even understand the Olympic pressure that I'm under. But there are people that do understand it, and that's the Olympic gold medalists in other sports. So back in that day, we didn't have a thing called cell phones. What we had were answering machines. And so I would get the phone number of an Olympic gold medalist or a world champion, and I would call them, and I would leave a message on their answering machine, something like, you don't know me, but I'm Lanny Bassham. I'm an Olympic silver medalist. You're an Olympic gold medalist. I need your help. Will you call me back, please? And they always did. Now, I think if I'd have been a journalist or a sports psychologist or a self-help book writer, and I tried to get the information from an Olympic gold medalist, they wouldn't have. I think I got information that nobody else could get, because they would call me back because they knew that I'd been to the game. I had been where I understood what it takes. And I had at least won a silver medal in the Olympics, and they were wonderful. Everybody called me back.
That's crazy.
And nobody had the whole story, but everybody had a piece of it. And I saw some patterns, and I said, well, there's a system to this. And so I put the system together, and the first opportunity I had to use it was the World Shooting Championships in 1974, and I ended up winning three individual world titles, 15 medals total. And I mean, I walk out of the World Championships #1 in the world. We didn't rank shooters back then. They do now, but we didn't rank them back then. But in my sport, in the sports that I won the World Championships in, obviously I would be ranked #1 at least for a while. And so that was the start of it. And I've never stopped finding out what the winners are thinking and seeing there are principles, there are preferences, but there are ways to think.
What sports were they in that it wasn't shooting, right? It was.
No, that was shooters. Shooters aren't going to tell me anything.
Right.
They're going to shoot against me next week.
Uh-huh.
It's archery, track, swimming, a lot of other. I can't remember all of them. I mean, here's the great thing about the Olympics. It's a pretty small family. So if you have the phone number of an Olympic archer, you have the phone numbers of all of the archers in that country.
Right.
And you probably have the phone number of archers in other countries.
And one of them probably has a phone number of a swimmer.
A swimmer.
Yeah.
How many swimmers?
Yeah.
And so it's not that difficult to at least get a contact. What's hard is to get their to put it in such a way that they are willing to help and to have a conversation. And over time, I got really good at what questions to ask. And I got good at being able to interpret. Sometimes people we didn't have a uniform lingo or a language. So some people would describe certain things that they were doing, and they had a name for it, and it would be in another sport, it would be another name. Like, for example,
I'm big on this lingo, this terminology. I'm really big on that. Like, how can you learn something? I feel so out of the loop if I don't know what a terminology is. You know what I mean?
I'll give you an example. In golf, it's called the yips. The yips.
What is that?
In archery, it's called target panic. In rifle shooting, it's called flinch. Okay, so you got to, after a while, you realize that, that's what you're doing. Well, in archery, that's what we call that target panic. And so but now things are different now. I mean, it's over the last 45 years I've been doing this, the interest in mental training has grown every year. And now it's hard to find a competitor magazine. Like in Shotgun, we have a magazine that comes out every month called Clay Target Nation. And it's hard not to have an article in there about the mental game every month. And so that's not so much in team sports, but in individual sports, people are talking about it a lot more. But you're absolutely right. The sooner you start with mental skills, the faster you're going to learn form, and the quicker your rise to the top of your potential is going to be. And that's the reason why several years ago I wrote a book called Parenting Champions. So because I think that parents are the most important mental coach that a child will ever have. The interaction between a parent and a child while they're still home is shapes their future. I mean, 75%. I don't know what the exact percentage is. I'm gonna say 75% of a person's self-image is shaped before they graduate from high school.
That's actually my next question. Is I just came across that book. I didn't see that you had one about parenting, and I always thought, like, how can I phrase this? You know, like I said about your gifts that you have in this life, your athletic gifts, your height, your speed are all like just luck, right? But also your parents is part of this luck. And I would assume that someone like you, I'm just going out on a limb here, probably had good parents. You're probably a good parent yourself. And then I see that you have this book about parenting. And I'm like,
well, I had good parents. My father was an excellent coach. What my father was really good at, he was good at building people. And now we didn't know about self-image. We never heard the word. But he was a solution-based coach. What I would find out later, this concept of imprinting, that every time you think about the solution, your self-image grows. Your self-image is your habits and attitudes. It's your belief in yourself, your confidence, the trust factor, and do I got this, or do I'm afraid of doing this? Can I do it or can I do it? That's your self-image. It's your opinion of how you fit in the world and how you fit, whether or not you can do this or can't do it. Okay, well, how is that formed? It's formed by what you actually do. It's formed by your environment, who you're around, and things like that. If all your friends are jerks, you're a jerk. If all your friends are positive, you're positive. If all your friends are drug dealers, you're dealing drugs. That's why parents are concerned about who their kids hang with. The third thing is here's what I didn't know and found out later, that every time you think about doing something, you improve the probability. Every time you worry about doing something, you improve the probability you'll do it. And people are terrible worriers. They're terrible complainers. Every time you complain about something doesn't work, you just improve the probability it's like you not to be able to do it. So you got to control what you think about. The top 5% that do 95% of the winning don't do that. The top 5% think about what they want to have happen. They don't think about the fact that they might fail. They think about how to succeed. They think about when they make a mistake, they don't look at a mistake. They don't beat themselves up. What the top 5% do is they say, "Oh, I made a mistake. What's that teaching me? Oh, okay. There's a lesson here. I'm gonna learn that lesson. I'm not going to make that mistake again."
Like the mistakes are. I don't think everybody sees mistakes as obvious as you probably do, though. Like, this has been I've heard you say this before, and it's something that I've always been like thought a little counterintuitive. Like, how can we fix a leak if we can't identify it? For me, I have to like look for leaks.
Well, you be careful looking for leaks. You'll find them.
Yeah, I found them. Make them bigger.
You'll make them bigger than they really are.
Mm.
And you'll create a train wreck out of a bump in the road. And so what you got to be careful about is that a person, while you're looking for a mistake, and while you're talking and complaining about and beating yourself up and all that kind of stuff, the guy that's beating you in tournaments is thinking about, oh, here's what I did right. What did that feel like? I want to do that again. Here's what I learned. He's thinking that way, and his self-image is growing, and your self-image is shrinking.
It's bad for your self-image to concern yourself with the leaks. You think that if I just focus on the positive and what I did right, it'll kind of the leaks will intuitively go away?
No. I think you won't make them worse by doing that. I think you will improve the probability that you'll do it right more often by doing that. But I'm advocating that you do two things. Number one is that you reinforce what you did right. And number two, you think, when you do something wrong, you learn from it. So you don't ignore the mistakes. You don't ignore them. Making mistakes is not a mental error. Making mistakes and learning from it is a requirement to get better.
What if that mistake is a habit? That leads me to my next question. Like, how do you break habits? What have you done in your experience to break habits?
You break. Well, first of all, you've got to realize that what that habit is doing to you, as long as it doesn't mind, you don't mind the fact that habit is doing something to you, as long as you say, well, I don't mind that. That's okay. That's not hurting me all that much. But when you get to the point you realize that, that really hurts, you'll probably stop doing that. You'll be motivated to do something about it.
Do you have an anecdote? Anything from your...
What a lot of people, well, I mean, it happens to us every day. I mean, the phone rings, but normally the people that come in my door are people that have tried to fix all of their mental problems by competing more, by training more, by working harder, by changing equipment, by changing coaches. All the time, they're not working on the thing that's broken. That's their mind, their thoughts. And finally, they run through all of that, and they don't get satisfaction, and they finally decide what's left? Well, what's left is I got to change the way I think, and I don't know what to think, and I don't know how to do it. Is there anybody that knows how? Yeah, we do. And so that's where they come. So the frustrated expert is probably 75% of our business. The other big part of our business is parents that read Parenting Champions, or they read With Winning in Mind, or Freedom Flight, or Attainment, or whatever, one of our books, and they Google search us and call us up and they say, oh, you got programs for kids. No, parents will spend money on their kids, and especially golf parents, and if the kid's trying to play Division I golf in the United States.
I mean, if you have good parents, they'll spend money on their kids.
Well, okay. Let's talk about you indicated. What do you do when you don't have a good parent? What do you do when you would think that you have to have perfect parents with a lot of money to be successful? Well, I'll tell you that's not true. Go to the library, pick up all of the books in the library on Olympic champions, and go through them.
Hey, I agree with you, but it's
there's almost no stories with mom and dad being
perfect,
uber successful. I mean, there's an occasional story like Earl Woods and Tiger Woods. Obviously Earl Woods was a difference maker, and Tiger being as good as he was, as young as he was. But I will tell you, Earl Woods was a factor, but Tiger's 98% of it. And coaches, you got to think about it. Coaches don't they don't pay us when my students win. They don't pay me. All I can do for somebody is I can save them a boatload of time and frustration and pain and agony. I can save you all that, but I cannot make you win. If my system worked, made everybody a winner, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
The only way we get to this point is if that student is mature.
I would be super rich somewhere. I don't know what I would be doing. I'd be giving a lot of money away to a lot of needy people. I guarantee I would be doing that so I can save people time and frustration. But the winning is done by the athlete themselves, by the individual. And they have to do a lot of things. You can find opportunity. I'll tell you, somebody that's disadvantaged by parents, learn from your parents.
That's what I did.
Things that you don't like about your parents, don't do that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I tried to do.
Learn from your parents. And if you're so fortunate to have a loving parent, my suggestion that you do, if your parents are loving and they are providing you with support, you should get down on your knees and thank them for every dime they spend, because just as soon as you turn 21 or get out of college, the faucet's turned off. And you better learn everything you can, because at some point you got to do it on your own, and then you become the adult. And so pay attention with what your parents do. Ask a lot of questions. I'll tell you somebody else you need to really ask a lot of questions to. Is anybody that you know that's successful in anything? I have a good friend of mine, Steve J. Anderson. And Steve is a multimillionaire, great guy, super smart young guy. And when he was mentored by a guy by the name of Walter Haley, and you asked for an antidote, so I'll throw Steve's story on you. So when Walter Haley was a very, very wealthy guy, and kind of a philosopher, would tell people how he got there. And so Steve heard Walter talk one time, and he decided, while he was in college, he would go see Walter. And so he told him, he said, I think he was like a freshman in college. He had a few minutes with Walter Haley, and he says, Mr. Haley, when I graduate from college, I want to work for you. And Walter says, oh, you do, huh? And he says, yeah. He says, well, I'll tell you what, it'll go a long way working with me if you'll do what I tell you to do. And he said, what's that? He said, what's your major? He said, finance. He says, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go find out who the most successful people in the finance world within 50 miles of your school. Who are they? And you ask around, you'll find out. Names will pop up, and you get 25 of them, and you call them up and tell them that you've got an assignment that you need to complete. And you want to talk to them for 5 minutes, and you won't take much more than 5 minutes of their time. And if you're in there longer than 5 minutes, it's because they want you to be. And so you go in and you ask them 3 questions, and you shut up. And most important thing is that you are interested in them and not interesting. You're not trying to sell yourself or sell them on anything or do anything like that. You just ask the questions and listen. And he says, okay, what are the 3 questions? He said, the first one is what do you like about what you do? And the second one is, what do you don't like about what you do, and what would you most like to do to change it? And the third one is, how does somebody like me become you?
What was the second question? I didn't understand it.
The question was, what don't you like about what you do, and how would you go about changing it if you could?
Okay.
And so he went back to school, but he didn't do it. He didn't do what Walter said. He didn't talk to 25 people. He talked to 50. And when he graduated from school, he came back to Walter Haley, and he says, "Okay, Mr. Haley, I talked to 50 guys," and Walter said, "How many six-figure income offers did you get?" And he says, 6. He said, which one did you take? He said, I didn't take any of them. He said, I want to work with you. And then Walter said, well, you came at the wrong time. I'm retired now. I'm not hiring anybody. And so I'm not going to hire you. And so he shut the door, and Steve turned around and walked out, and he stops and he goes back and he knocks on the door again. Walter comes to the door, and Steve says, Mr. Haley, I don't want to be your employee, but I do want to be your partner. And he says, and Walter said, well, partner in what? And he said, well, I don't know, whatever you come up with. So Walter gave Steve an assignment, gave him a small retainer, I guess. And he says, I went to the dentist today, and the dentist did a pretty good job, but the customer service in that dental office was just terrible. He says, I want you to survey 25 dental offices in the area, and I want you to come up with the one that has customer service nailed down. The one that where customers are really treated great. He says, you come back and talk to me when you've done that. And so he did. And so he says, let's make an appointment with the dentist. And so they go in there, and the guy that owns the dentist that owns the dental office, and he says, Walter said, I'm going to make you famous. I want to know everything that you're doing to make your customers feel good when they come in your dental office. He says, I know that you're making more money than anybody else is, and that's one why. And so I'm going to take those techniques, and I'm going to teach let's say his name was Dr. John Smith. He says, I'm going to teach the Dr. John Smith method in seminars, and I'm going to give you 25% of the gate. You don't have to do anything. Just tell me your secrets. I'll put it packaged together. I'll teach it, and we will train dental offices. And we'll take your methods and we'll polish them up, and we'll present them to dental offices. And then he taught Steve how to go to a dental office and say, if I could show you how you can make 25% more money by increasing your customer service, would you be willing to send your staff to a dental boot camp? And so they started doing dental boot camps. Well, now, after they did that and was successful in doing that, the people that went to these dental boot camps, they all had children, and they saw these concepts that Walter Haley, he was working his own concepts into it too, about self-image and things like that, his version of what I do. And they all had children, and they said, well, we've been trying to teach these to my children. He said, so that gave Steve the idea of EOU. So he runs every year, he runs multiple leadership camps for high school and college age people, teaching them. And what he does is he has people like me come in and teach our stuff. Sharp guys that are successful. They come in and they teach the kids, and and parents pay good money there for a week-long trip at EOU. And so he's got that going. And then he found out that some of the dentists, they like to do dental work, but they don't like to run a dental office. So he started buying up dental offices. So I don't know how many dental offices they own, maybe a couple of hundred. Okay, all of that came out of one idea that Walter Haley had. Mm-hmm. But not one time did he think that just because it hadn't been done before, that you can't do it. I mean, think about where the way things are marketed today. It's nothing like my business. I'm shutting down my office at the end of the month. Why? because COVID has created a bunch of people in the world that can be taught, just like we're talking right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're in China, I'm in Texas, and we're having no problem communicating with each other.
So you don't need the office anymore.
And so people are working from home, and they're not having to drive in the traffic, and so things are happening, and we're going to be more productive. We're going to know more, and we're going to be more efficient in the future, as long as we don't get lazy.
Well, I have so much I want to ask you. We're already at an hour. I'm gonna maybe bug you next month for another one of these if I can. But for the last one I have for you today, and this one is an important one to me and one I've been on the fence about, is what are your thoughts on clutch performance? That being in basketball, the last 10 seconds of the game, or the last quarter of the game, or for your endeavor, shooting, the highest moment, the biggest moment. What do you think it's important, or is like every shot equal throughout a tournament? Because I flip-flop back and forth.
Well, there's a little bit difference between team sports like basketball and shooting, which is an individual sport.
Right.
But actually, shooting, archery, golf, those kind of sports, proactive sports where the athlete initiates the action. If you have mental consistency in any sport, anything that you can make a constant is a big advantage. Like there are certain sports that are a sport of variables. Like golf is a sport of variables. There are more variables on a golfer than any other sport that I coach, that I've ever coached, because everything's variable. I mean, every shot is different. Every golf course is different. You play the same golf course 4 days in a row in a PGA Tour event, and they change the pin placement every day. So the golf course plays differently. And with weather changes, and everything, there's so many changes.
Yeah,
that can happen. Anything that you can make a constant in a sport of changes, of variables, is a big advantage. Well, your mental process can be a constant. You can determine the optimum thing to think about before, during, and after a golf shot. And it doesn't matter whether you're leading or behind, or if it's the first shot or the last shot. You can have mental consistency, and it's a proven fact. If you have mental consistency, you have technical consistency. And if you have technical consistency, you have a lower score. And a lower score in golf is the thing you want. And so the same thing happens in shooting, and same thing happens in free throw shooting in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So you're wanting to have the same mental process, independent of where you are in the game, independent of which shot it is, or independent of whether you're leading or behind. Because if you are letting the outcome determine how you think, how hard you try, your mental game is not a constant. It's a variable. If your mental game is a function of score is always a variable. The situation's always a variable. The environment's always a variable.
It's a distraction if you're thinking about anything other than strategizing. Basically, is a distraction. So if you're thinking about the outcome, it's a distraction.
You're going to be beaten by somebody that's thinking about the process of execution.
Mm.
So that's for sure true. Now I understand that the strategy varies shot to shot. Like, a golfer, his strategy is going to vary shot to shot, but his method, his process could be a constant. And we teach, in my system, we teach a 9-step mental process, and all of those steps are really critical. And we teach teach people how to determine the optimal thing to think about before and after a shot, and all that, and that helps them to become helps them with pressure, helps them to be able to control the pressure, helps them to have a uniform mental process, which gives them technical consistency, and that's what they're looking for. They want something that gives them a consistent mental performance under pressure on demand.
So in terms of value of the clutch performance and like the first quarter and the last 30 seconds of the game, in terms of value, do you believe that they are equal in value?
Well, in my sport, they are.
I agree with that. And I think that this is a big mistake that people are over paying attention.
You can't shoot an 11 in my sport.
Right. It's the same. That's what I was trying to tell people. I was like, 2 points is in the first quarter is the same as 2 points with 30 seconds left on the clock. What am I missing here?
There's something else interesting about all this, really, is that the only thing that the spectator knows is what the commentators are telling them. And the commentators are limited in knowing what's really going on in a game.
How's that?
Or in a golf. Let's talk about golf for a minute. I mean, golf is you've got all these cameras on the golfer, and you've got a commentator or maybe a pair of commentators talking about where the golfer is and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'll tell you what the commentator is talking about is improving the entertainment quality of watching golf. But it's not anywhere close to what the player is thinking about. And some commentators actually do know what the players should be thinking about because they're players themselves. The color commentators are people who have played before, and they can talk really. I mean, I love to watch pro football, but it's more fun if you can listen to, somebody like Troy Aikman or Tony Romo or somebody telling us about the play and about the players, and the more you know, the more entertaining it is, but you're not really understanding to a high degree what the athletes on the field are thinking, and it would be very interesting too if you did know, but there's no way that you can.
Yeah,
you can't see what a person thinks.
I agree with all of that. That's what I've been saying too for a while now. Is that that's the reason is that we think that the fourth quarter has more value is because of these color commentators, or just, a picture of Larry Bird shooting with 3 seconds on the clock. It's like, it's ingrained into our culture that is somehow more important.
Well, and think about this. When you're watching golf, they don't show you all the bad shots that these guys make. You want to see some bad golf shots? You want to see some bad shots? Go watch a golf tournament. Watch as many golf tournaments that I watch. And I mean, they hit them in the trees. They lose balls. They do all kinds of stuff.
I didn't know that.
Just because they're pros, they tend to show you what the leaders are doing. Okay, and even the leaders make mistakes every now and then, but that it's interesting. Certain words come up with, the commentators come up with things like words like momentum. What's that? Well, if you got three birdies in a row, you've got the momentum behind you. Well, when you're doing well, and you got the momentum. What is that?
I can rephrase the word momentum as calibration. Like, you're calibrated at that moment. Does that make sense?
Okay, so if that's true, then explain this. There was a statistical group of people that not long ago took the top 25 players and they tracked their scorecards. You can get their scorecards. It's not difficult to do of tournaments for an entire year. And they were interested in finding out what's the difference between when a guy birdies a hole, what's the probability that he'll birdie the next one? Or what's the probability he'll have a bogey and then he'll birdie the next one? So what do you think? What do you think if a player has a birdie, what do you think the probability of the next hole being a birdie? Is it higher or lower?
I guess if you're averaging out a long time span, momentum's not gonna exist. But if you take a small sample, I would imagine the probability of the next birdie would be high.
Yeah. Well, what's the probability if you have a bogey of the next shot being a bogey? Is it higher or lower?
I would imagine the person might increase their focus because they just shot a bogey. Depends on the person, I guess, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what. There is so little difference that every time they ran it, there would be a slight difference. Like one time they ran it, and the probability of getting a birdie, depending on when you started, but a probability of getting a birdie after a birdie is slightly better, and the next time they run it was slightly worse. It's not statistically significant. So what that pretty much kills the momentum idea. I mean, it's just like if you're playing roulette and
right.
It's red, 6 times in a row. What's the probability that the next one is going to be red? Is it higher or lower? It's exactly the same as the first one. Well, if you run enough statistics, you realize that players don't run. Sometimes you can say if a player is hurt, or if he's just not on his game today. There is a statistical difference between once you start bogeying, once you start playing bad, you tend to play bad. Once you start playing good, you tend to play good. That's true. However, shot to shot, I mean, just like you brought up the point, and I agree with it, that if you take a single shot on a single player and don't take into consideration what the other shots in the past were, or what just one shot and the next shot, the statistical difference between, if you're going to bet, if you're in Las Vegas and you're going to bet about who's going to birdie or bogey, there's not a statistical difference of what he's going to do. The probability he's going to par is higher than the probability he's going to birdie or bogey. But the probability that he's going to birdie after a birdie or birdie after a bogey is almost exactly the same. What I'm trying to say is that players who are consistent have more birdies and less bogeys than players that aren't consistent. But it's not because of momentum. It's not because the last shot, last series was serious. You also have this happen, that you'll watch a guy play and I've had clients do this too. I mean, this happens. This is golf. There are players that win a golf tournament one week, play the next week, and don't make the cut. They don't finish after 2 days in the top 60.
So
and they'll swear up and down they were doing everything exactly the same that they did the week before. There are a lot of variables. But it's just an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But if you can make a sport more interesting, as long as you don't lie, I don't believe that they're trying to lie. The commentators are trying to lie. I think it's entertainment. It's increasing the entertainment value. When you increase the entertainment value of people, you'll have a larger audience, and then now the sport can grow because there's money in sport, and so the players can, people want to play professional golf because you can make a good living at it. People, that's why the Olympics is interesting, because you've got some, they're getting pretty good at getting the right commentator. Even rifle shooting, which is not a spectator sport, but they've taken the finals in the Olympics. They video the finals with color commentating on it, and you can actually go on to the Olympic channel, whatever it is, and during the Olympics you can watch. You may still be able to do it, but I know that during the Olympics you can watch the finals of every Olympic sport on demand, on a replay, and that is extremely interesting.
Yeah,
even sports that you would never think to watch or never go to see. But it's interesting because, it's something you've never seen before, and shooting and archery are really exciting when you watch how they do it, and you're not trying to watch 60 shooters, you're trying to watch the eight people that had the best scores in the preliminary are going at it in the final, and.
I've only been shooting one time in my life, and you make me want to go shooting, but I'm in China. You're not allowed to have guns here.
I would imagine that's a little bit more difficult. You got to be a sport shooter. You got to know the right people to be able to shoot.
Well, Lanny, it's been very interesting talking to you. I got to about half of my questions. I might bug you again for another one of these if I can. Lanny, I love what you do. I'm kind of planning and following in your footsteps in many ways, because I kind of do what you do with the whole mental management thing, and I just take it from poker though. So
that's find the best players, find out what they're doing, and teach it. I think you're going to find that the best players probably, there's a different skill set between playing and teaching it. And the top players, they know what to do, but 9 out of 10 can't teach it. And you don't have to be a top player or money winner to have a successful to coach, to be a successful coach. My coach, who's in the Hall of Fame, Bill Pullum, is in the USA Shooting Hall of Fame as a coach. He didn't win any Olympic medals, but he was a great coach. And so, but he knew the sport. And he knew how to push buttons.
I'm gonna have some dart players on next week, and I'm sure I'll find a lot of commonalities between the things that you talk about and the things that they talk about.
I'll tell you what, if a high percentage of when you talk to a lot of top performers, and you listen to what they say. If somebody's not agreeing with a lot of, if they don't agree with me, and I don't have people at the top listening to my stuff and saying that's wrong. I don't listen to their stuff and say that's wrong. It's because if you find somebody that's teaching something that's totally different than what everybody that's winning is saying, they're wrong.
Or if they've succeeded and they're saying something different than all the other top people are saying, they're succeeding because they're 6'9" with a 250 pounds with a 50-inch vertical. And I think people are underestimating that greatly.
Well, if maybe one way to say this is that if you're doing something different from all the top people and you're successful, you're called innovative. If you're doing something different from all the top people and you're not successful, you're called stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. So it just
yeah.
depends on how innovative do you want to be. You want to be innovative. That's okay. I'm always listening. I got my ear to the ground to try to hear the next great things. But there've been a lot of things that have been pushed out there over the years that nobody's doing now, and because they weren't all that good when they were.
I'm going to remember exactly that kind of phrase you just said. Like, if the people at the top are doing something innovative, that what you just said. That's great.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember subliminal tapes.
I've seen that Brady Bunch episode.
Yeah.
Or was it Saved by the Bell?
Tapes, you had cassette tapes back in the 70s or 80s, and you could plug it in, and you couldn't hear what they were saying because it was like waves in the sea or white noise, and somehow that's going to teach you French or make you a champion or whatever it was, and nobody's using subliminal tapes today because it doesn't work.
Yeah,
I mean, what worked, what people thought it worked, that it worked was a placebo effect. So if you think it's going to work. I mean, if you went out to the golf course and everybody was wearing red, and you thought, well, that's the key. I gotta get a red coat. Okay, so you might play a little better because you thought it was work, and then you find out that they're required to wear red or something like that.
Right. Feel stupid.
Well, look, have a good day, and I hope you're successful in what you want to do. And
thank you, Lenny. Have a good one.
You.
Bye.
Take care.